If you're heading to AgriScot on the 19th of November, join us for a live episode recording with SAYFC. Starting at 9 a.m. in Seminar Room 2, I'll be joined by Katrina Gemmell and Jack Young to record an episode on what young farmers has meant for their well-being, how Katrina filled that void when it was time to move on, and maybe a few tales from those legendary young farmers' dances. Pop along to be part of the Blether. That's AgriScot, 9 a.m, Seminar Room 2. Now, on with the show. Welcome to Blether Together, brought to you by Farmstrong Scotland. I'm your host, Sarah Stephen, and together we'll be travelling across Scotland to chat to farmers and crofters to learn more about them, their businesses, challenges, and the positive steps they take to manage their well-being. Our thanks go to NFU Mutual Charitable Trust for supporting the podcast series, and to our founding funders, Movember and the Royal Highland Agricultural Society of Scotland. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of sleep is a periodic state of muscular relaxation, reduced metabolic rate, and suspended consciousness in which a person is largely unresponsive to events in the environment. Well, before any of you drift off or start counting sheep, stay with us for today's guest, Alyson O'Brien from Sleep Action. It's the UK's oldest sleep charity, and she's here to share some of her top tips for getting the best Zeds every night. Good morning, Alyson.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us on Blether Together.
It's lovely to be here.
So, topics that divide the nation's opinion: weather and sleep.
Absolutely.
It certainly dominates my household at the moment. Who gets the more sleep? Who doesn't get enough sleep? Oh, you're sleeping more than me. You're sleeping better than me. I wondered, did you get a good sleep last night?
I have a toddler that's going through a bit of a phase at the moment, so not particularly, which is funny. People always expect, oh, you work for Sleep Action, you must sleep really well every night, and your son must sleep it really well every night. No, because he is a typical toddler, and we all go through changes. And actually, I think there's this idea that if you sleep well, you should always sleep well, but actually that isn't necessarily the case. Generally, I sleep well, and generally he does sleep well, but we all have bad nights, and that's normal. And sometimes stressing about it can be the worst thing we could do.
I know people often like to nail their colours to the mast, don't they? And say, well, I'm not a morning person. No, I'm not a morning person. I don't like the mornings. And you definitely know when somebody's not a morning person.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is the little bit of truth to that, actually. Some of us are naturally morning people. And that morning lark and night owl thing is actually true. Some people are a little bit in the middle and aren't particularly one or the other, but some people are very extreme one way or the other. Usually they marry each other. I'm a bit of a morning lark, and my husband is definitely a night owl, so we have very conflicting sleep patterns. But I can imagine, within the farming community, especially, it's such a cyclical process, different things that are happening. But usually what it means is you have to be a morning person. You have to get up first thing in the morning. And if you naturally are not a morning person, actually it could be quite challenging for you because you're not designed to be up and doing those things first thing in the morning. So you have to almost force it. You have to work even harder than somebody else who naturally is like, yeah, 5 a.m, get up, no problem, not absolutely fine for me. Other people are like, no, I'd be much better if I could stay in bed till 9 or 10 and get up, and then I'd be my best self.
And because of the demands of the job, of course, that choice is taken away from you.
Absolutely.
And we're at that time of year when everything is getting a little bit lighter earlier and staying lighter longer. It's just got that promise in the air, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You can feel spring is coming. For our farming community, there'll be a very busy time coming up, I'm sure, because spring is on the way. But yeah, we do all feel a little bit lighter and a bit happier when you get up in the morning and it's starting to get light, or it is light when you finish your day of work and actually it's still light and you can get out and about. It's so good for us.
So Alyson, in the previous podcast, we've sort of started a little bit of a theme. I've done some rapid fire questions, and I wonder if you'd be game for answering some rapid fire questions.
Let's give it a go.
Okay, I'll just fire away. So, soft or firm pillow?
Personally, I like a firmer pillow, but I know that everybody is a little bit different. I work a lot with children and we tend to say not too soft, but it's personal preference.
Okay, first thing that comes to your mind, favourite sleep position?
On my right-hand side.
What's the weirdest dream you've ever had?
I had one recently where I was out at sea and I was trying to paddle across. I can't even remember where I was trying to get to, but it was one of those ones where I just couldn't move very well. It was almost like I was partly awake, but not quite asleep. Very weird, very weird.
Would you rather never dream again or always have the same dream?
I'd rather always have the same dream.
What's the best way to fall asleep for you?
For me, relaxed, calm, dark environment. Ideally, I've read a wee page of my book or two before I go to sleep, nice and quiet.
Snorer or non-snorer?
I was a snorer when I was pregnant, which is very typical. That can happen, but not so much now.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
First thing I do when I wake up is usually it's go and see my son, or my son is there in my face, wanting to saying, "Mommy, wake up."
Tea or coffee in the morning?
Coffee first thing, tea later on.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like a good strong coffee in the morning. Okay, well, I'll ingest that all into my Freudian app and we'll have the results at the end of the of the chat. So Alyson, sleep, as I said, is one of the nation's favorite topics, and farmers, often go with the seasons, so they have to get up very early, regardless of whether or not they're a morning person. What advice would you give to people in terms of sleep patterns if they're struggling with sleep?
Yeah, the biggest thing we can do is think about the whole day rather than just bedtime. Often what happens is someone will go to bed and they'll lie awake because they're just not ready for sleep. Luckily, with farmers, we don't have to worry about things like get outside during the day and get plenty of exercise. That's a given, that's fine. But they might have to think about things like, are you drinking too much caffeine later on in the day? Some of us are very sensitive to caffeine and it can take 10 hours to get that caffeine out of our system. So if you are one of those people and you're having a cup of coffee at 6 o'clock at night, you're not going to be able to fall asleep when you need to come bedtime. So cutting out that later caffeine can be a real help. And just preparing yourself for bed. You might feel physically exhausted because you've had a really busy day, especially, certain times of the year when it is even more challenging than usual. But if your brain's still going and you're really thinking things through, you're not going to be able to get to sleep. So you need to find a way to really calm and relax yourself, brain and body, to be able to get that good night's sleep. And as I said, try not to stress about it. Stress is the worst thing. What stress does is it releases cortisol in our system, and cortisol keeps us awake. And we need it. It's good for us. It gets us up and gets us going. But if we then stress about not being able to get to sleep, we won't get to sleep. So then our body produces more cortisol. So then we can't get to sleep. So then we're stressed because we're not sleeping. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So relax, think about caffeine, and have that nice wind down before bed.
It's interesting you mentioned caffeine because my husband, he drinks coffee, and at 11:30 at night, he'll have two espressos.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 minutes later, he'll be in bed fast asleep.
On paper, that shouldn't happen, but I have a colleague that does the same. It's not two espressos, but she'll have a cup of proper caffeinated coffee before bed. What we have is these things called Zeitgebers. It's a German word. It means time givers. And essentially those things in our routine tell our brain and body certain things are going to happen. So because he has that cup of coffee every single night before he goes to bed, his brain sees that as oh, it's dark outside. He's doing these things. He's having his cup of coffee. It's sleep time. I should go to sleep. So there'll be a certain element of the habit of doing that probably is helping him get to sleep. The only thing you might find, especially as he gets older, is he then has to get up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night. So he might have to think about how much of that he's having. But for most people, we say, don't do that. It's not a good idea. But for other people, my thing is, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. If he
So
goes
he's
to
not a
sleep,
freak. He's not a freak of nature. That's
he's
fine.
not a freak of
I'll let.
nature. He's almost trained himself to expect that cup of coffee, and that will help him go to sleep.
I mean, at the moment, sleep's a bit of an issue in our house because I haven't slept well for many years, and he can sleep anywhere, any time of
Mhm.
day, and even if there's a snooze in the day, he can still sleep it in the at night. And my children, thankfully, have inherited that from him. And I just wonder. We often talk. You're talking about you having a toddler and babies,
Yeah.
and you'll meet mums, and I meet mums all the time in my line of work. They go, "Oh, I just, I don't have a good sleeper. He's not a good sleeper.
Mhm.
They don't sleep well." And I just wonder if it's sometimes we reinforce that, or there is
Mhm.
something within us that makes us better sleepers or good or bad sleepers.
I think there is a certain mindset around sleep. And, I speak to people all the time who are like, oh, I'm not a good sleeper, or my child is not a good They've never slept. They've never slept. Well, that's not true. There is no way that your child has never slept. But we do get into this mindset of absolutely they don't. Some people do naturally sleep more easily than others, and some people need to reinforce that routine and really get certain things in place so that they are able to sleep a little bit better. It definitely comes to a thing of, if you get the idea in your head that you don't sleep well, then you won't sleep well. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that, okay, then, well, you're not going to sleep particularly well. And your brain and body is like, well, I just don't do this. So you stay alert and it keeps that cortisol going. It keeps you awake. But some people do have to work harder at it than others. It is just because we're all different, we're all unique.
And I'm thinking about the impact that, sleep or lack of it has
Mm,
on your day. When you wake up and you've had a bad night's sleep, in any job, it can be a bit of a
yeah.
challenge to work effectively. And I suppose in farming, other factors come into play. If you're on your own, you've had a bad night's sleep, the responsibility is all yours. It can probably have quite a detrimental effect on one's day.
Absolutely. I think, one bad sleep here and there, we can all cope and actually almost thinking it's worse than it is. Usually you'll have a really bad night's sleep and think, oh God, it's going to be an awful day. And then you get to the day and you're like, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But when it's persistent bad sleeping, then you're thinking about, you're more likely to be grouchy. If you're on your own, that can be really challenging. You're more likely to experience things like intrusive thoughts if you're not sleeping well consistently. There can be safety implications. Obviously, farmers using machinery, their focus and concentration slips and they could have an accident because they've not been sleeping particularly well. Everything that our brain and body does while we're sleeping, it's repairing, it's renewing, it's making sure that we are working to the best of our ability. So obviously prioritizing your sleep is important. And obviously I would say that as a representative from Sleep Action, but it really is, we cannot be the best person we are if we're not sleeping well consistently. As I say, the odd bad night's sleep is not the end of the world, but we really should be. It's as important as eating well, as getting exercise. If you're not getting good sleep, actually it almost negates doing anything else for your health and well-being because it's so essential to everything.
Is there a trick formula for combating daytime fatigue?
Daytime fatigue, often it's thinking about, well, how much sleep am I getting at nighttime? Am I getting good quality sleep? You mentioned snoring. Snoring actually is really bad for our sleep. Some people will say, oh yes, my other half sleeps for 9 hours and they snore really, really loud. Well, they're probably not getting good quality sleep because what snoring does is it stops us getting those deep stages of sleep, which is when we do a lot of our repair and our renewal. As we get older, we're more likely to snore, which means we're more likely to have that poor quality sleep. So it's something to always consider. I can see you putting your hand to your mouth, having this this light bulb moment.
It's really funny because a small memory is coming to mind. I was away last week with a girlfriend. We happened to be sharing a bedroom, and I haven't slept well for a long time. So I tend to have tools that I'll implement if I wake up in the night. Like I'll read, I'll try and have a bit of a walk around and stuff. But we were sharing a bedroom and she was snoring. I won't name names, but it was quite off-putting. So I actually took a couple of voice memos of her in the morning so I could play them back to her. And she wasn't very happy about the fact, tongue in cheek, I was playing her these voice memos of her snoring. And it was a sort of body and mind retreat that I was on last week. So it was all about really sort of bit of navel gazing of our habits, etc. Anyway, fast forward a couple of nights, and she then took voice memos of me snoring, and I was sort of quite proud of it because it meant that I thought I was like, I'm really in a deep sleep there. I'm out of it. I'm snoring. By the way, we are best friends.
Yeah. So it's allowed. It's okay.
But I thought, oh great, I'm snoring. I'm really in a deep sleep. This is having a really positive impact on me.
No, it's never good for us. Snoring is not good. We won't be getting good quality sleep. We won't be getting that repair and renewal. People who snore are more likely to have chest infections, colds. It can also be a symptom of something quite serious called sleep apnea, which I think is becoming more and more recognized. But actually, for years and years, it was almost just dismissed. But essentially, what happens with sleep apnea, with snoring, what's happening is your oxygen intake is reduced and you've got this vibration and obviously the loud noise. With sleep apnea, you actually stop breathing. And this can happen multiple tens of times during the night. And that can have a real serious implication on your health and well-being. Long term, it can lead to things like strokes, heart attacks. We obviously think people should be thinking about this. Well, is there something that's leading to this, causing me to snore? Age, unfortunately, we're more likely to snore. As we get a bit older, we put on a bit more weight. Everything just isn't as tight and firm as it is around your palate when you were young, just naturally. So you're more likely to snore. But with sleep apnea, sometimes, I know my dad's got sleep apnea and he thinks he's had it since he was about 18. And he was always dismissed of, you just a snorer, it's nothing. And he's like, but I feel rubbish, I'm unwell. I'm always catching every bug that's going around. It's really affecting my health and well-being. And eventually in his 50s, he got diagnosed with sleep apnea. He's getting treatment for it. And he's like, I'm a completely different person. And I didn't realize how awful it was until I got this treatment.
Sleep quality is so personal, isn't it? It's such a
Yeah.
personal thing. Back in the day, communities would have risen with the sunrise and stopped with the sunset. And I suppose we're just different beasts now, aren't we?
We've become definitely a bit more sort of 24-hour. We're expected to be contactable at any point. We're supposed to be able to fit in work and school and time with family, time with friends. Even in the busiest time and the busiest seasons for farmers, they've often got families as well. So they're also wanting to spend time with their children. They want, you need to do things around the house. You've got all this other stuff going on. We are expected to do an awful lot that at one time, it just wouldn't happen. And we also probably would have had more of a community around us to share the load a little bit more. Whereas I know families have worked in sort of rural communities. Often they don't necessarily have somebody nearby. They don't necessarily have family who can help with childcare, who can help with keeping on top of everything. So we're trying to do so much more, but we've only got the same number of hours we've only ever had.
You just talked about obviously the sort of challenges of people, having so much on their plate, and farmers are, part of that as well, and sleep apnea. And when people suffer from bad sleep, what would you advise them to do? Rather than sort of try and, relieve the stress and not think about it when they go to bed, can they get professional help?
For snoring and sleep apnea, I would always recommend, I probably won't be very popular for saying this because I'm aware of the demand on NHS services, but I would always recommend speaking to your GP, especially if somebody tells you that when you're snoring, you go very quiet and there's maybe a snort, because that's often the sign of sleep apnea. You could probably, do a search for a video of somebody with sleep apnea and listen to what it sounds like, because that's how we knew my dad had it, because I was like, yeah, I heard a video and I was like, that's what he sounds like. I would always recommend getting it checked out because it isn't something you can necessarily just fix on your own. You probably do need some assistance. If you're having issues with your sleep that's not to do with snoring, but, as you say, struggling to get to sleep, maybe waking in the night, if it's not something that's sort of a medical need, there is an app called Sleepio, which is NHS approved. It was developed by a team down in Oxford. We've worked with members of the team in the past, and it's a really good app for people who find those kind of things useful, and it just helps pick up. You keep a bit of a log of what your sleep's like, and it can help you with suggestions for things you might be able to do.
People often describe themselves as they might say, oh, I'm a light sleeper, I'm a heavy sleeper. Is that such a thing?
We all go through different stages of sleep. So we have lighter stages of sleep and we have deeper stages of sleep. And if all is well, we all go through all of those stages. I know one of the big things I get asked about is, those fitness trackers, and you can monitor your sleep. And it says that I only got an hour of deep sleep last night. It doesn't know. There is no way that fitness tracker knows how much deep sleep you had. It's kind of guesstimating based on your movement. The only way to know how much of each individual stage of sleep you have is to have monitors on your head that are actually measuring your brain. That's the only way to know how much of each
So
stage.
complete gimmicks. We've all been sold complete gimmicks.
They're good as a general overview of like, okay, it thinks I had about 7 hours of sleep last night. That's good, let's keep an eye on that. Or actually, it's pretty sure I only had about 4. We know that's not enough. I really need to do something about it. But people do get very obsessed with, I need more deep sleep. And it's like, well, you will get as much deep sleep as you need because that's what you're designed to do. As long as you're giving your body and your brain the time in bed to get as much sleep as you need, you will get the different stages that you need. The problem with lighter sleep is we're more likely to be woken up from it. So if we haven't got particularly good curtains and it's very light outside, we've got noisy animals who are maybe waking us up, we've got lots of children who like to come in at 3 a.m. and say, mummy, 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 wake up, I want to watch something on the TV, I want some breakfast, whatever it is, then we'll be like, oh yes, it's because I'm such a light sleeper. It's just light stages of sleep wake you up.
How many hours of sleep should a person really get?
So for adults, you're looking between 7 to 8 is the ideal. Some people can probably cope with 6. Some people might even need more. They might need closer to 9. I think at one point we were very prescriptive about, you'll have heard adults should get 7 hours of sleep. That was a very prescriptive amount. But what recent research has told us is actually we're all individual. So some of us need more sleep than others. There's even some research I've seen recently that suggests that women need more sleep than men. So actually you and I might need 8, but our husbands might only need 7. And that's just
And the rule of thumb is how many hours before midnight?
It depends on if you're a morning person or an evening person, because I ideally would be asleep by 10 o'clock, whereas my husband is much, much closer to midnight. And he would, if he was allowed to sleep through in the morning, that's when he would go to sleep. It very much depends on when you have to get up rather than worrying about before and after midnight.
So in terms of, me asking you the sort of quick fire questions at the beginning, what would be your top tips to people?
So my top tips for people are look at when you need to get up and give yourself that time to sleep, but actually focus more on rest than sleep. If you start focusing on, oh, I need to be sleeping, if you start clock watching, oh, I've got to get up in 4 hours, I've got to get up in 3 hours, you're not going to sleep well. Focus on rest rather than sleep. If you struggle to get to sleep or you wake up during the night, we all wake up during the night, absolutely normal. We're all Neanderthals at the end of the day. We wake up, we're just checking nothing's wandered into the cave to eat us. Okay, we're fine, we go back to sleep. But if something's different in the room, we'll wake up properly. So, oh, actually, I need the toilet. Okay, then I've woken up, I've got to go to the toilet. Actually, I haven't shut my curtains properly and it's light outside. Okay, I've woken up properly. It might just be a natural awakening. What we need is a way to get back to sleep, switch our minds off. So a good relaxation technique or a good distraction technique, just to stop yourself thinking about, oh, I need to get up in 3 hours and I need to do this and this and this, and then I've got to get the kids ready for this, and we mustn't forget that, we've got that doctor's appointment tomorrow, and trying to switch off as much as possible. But the biggest tip, the number one thing, is you need a wind down time before bed. It takes about an hour for our cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone, to dip, and then our melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone, to rise. And then in that hour, what we want to do is get our brain and body ready for sleep. So we want to switch off all our screens. We want to do something quite relaxing, get ourselves ready for bed, maybe read a chapter of a book, have lights out, ready to get to sleep.
So it's all just about that sort of calming effect, isn't it? Yeah. Exercise divides opinion in terms of how closely to your bedtime routine you can exercise or should exercise.
Yeah. So actually, it's less so much about how much exercise, but it's what kind of exercise you're doing. So if you're doing something very cardio heavy, and a lot of farming is very cardio heavy, you want to do that earlier in the day. Lucky for our farmers, that's generally when they have to do it. But you wouldn't want to be going for a run or a swim just before you go to bed, because again, it comes back to this cortisol. It's stress, but it's not bad stress necessarily. It's keeping us awake. Whereas something that's more strength-based, so a lot of us might do yoga or stretching, even kind of like weightlifting, that kind of thing. It's quite relaxing actually for our bodies. So doing that closer to bedtime, perfectly fine, actually can be really good for you, can help you relax and can help you get ready for sleep. So it's not so much doing too much exercise too close, it's what kind of exercise you're doing.
Some good top tips there, Alyson. Anything that we've missed that you think might be, interesting for farmers to hear in terms of sleep?
I think there'll be certain times of year when they're particularly busy with, for example, lambing season. They're not going to get as much sleep because there's so much to do. And it's not like the lambs can just wait till tomorrow. Like, if stuff's got to get done, it's got to get done. If you have a period like that where you're not sleeping particularly well because there's so much going on, and then you have a period where it's maybe you're able to focus on your sleep a little bit more, don't expect your sleep just to be absolutely fine straight away. It might take a little bit of time for that wind down hour to start to have an effect, for those relaxation techniques to start to have an effect. We almost have to retrain ourselves when we've had that very difficult, busy period to learn how to sleep again. And if you are somebody who identifies as someone who doesn't sleep particularly well, it's not going to be 1 or 2 nights and everything's going to be fine. It's going to take if you think how long it takes you to learn anything, and for it really to be embedded in your brain, it's not once or twice and then you just know it. It usually takes a little bit of time before it becomes habit, and that's exactly the same with our sleep. So that would be my biggest thing for people to take away.
Alyson, thank you very much. It's been fascinating listening to you and learning. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for having me. It's been good to talk to you.
We hope you enjoyed today's Blether and it has provided some inspiration for your own well-being. One small step can make a big impact. Find something that works for you. To read our latest stories and news, download our resources and tools, or connect with Farmstrong Scotland, visit our website, allthews.farmstrongscotland.org.uk, or follow us on social media.